Welcome back. Today we're just doing a good old-fashioned book recommendation list. I put together a bunch of prompts and questions for books to read when you're feeling a specific thing, or you're looking for a specific thing, or you're in a specific mood. I myself am such a mood reader, and sometimes there is absolutely something that I know I want to read. Like, I want a good rom-com, or I want a good plot twist, or something with a lot of world building. And so I just sat down and I thought of a bunch of prompts and questions that I myself have wanted at one point in time, and I wrote it all down and I came up with a bunch of books that hopefully fit those categories. And the goal here is to just be able to assist you all in finding a book to read, whatever you're feeling, whatever mood you're in. Hopefully there is something for everyone here. So we're just going to waste no more time and jump right into it. The first prompt I have is a book to read when you want to escape reality. I know we've all been there before. Sometimes that means reading a romance that is completely unlikely to ever happen. Sometimes that means reading something in the fantasy genre. It can really mean anything because it is not your personal reality. In this case though, I would really recommend reading The Philosopher's Flight by Tom Miller. When choosing all of the books for these questions, I know I tend to repeat recommendations, especially if you're somebody that's been watching my videos for a long time. You may see a couple books that I talk about all the time, and I am aware that I talk about them all the time. So with this video, I really challenged myself to pick books that I have either never talked about or very rarely talked about. I think The Philosopher's Flight maybe fits into that category. I know that I've talked about it before, but I definitely haven't talked about it in a while, and not very much. Although somebody could probably prove me wrong in that. Regardless, this is the book that I think you should read if you're looking to escape reality right now. So The Philosopher's Flight is set in an alternate reality of 20th century America. We're in the early 1900s-ish, and magic is real, but it is practiced primarily by women. It is super rare for a man to ever practice magic, and magic itself is called actually empirical philosophy, and it is treated more like a science than a magical, ethereal thing that you can't really have an understanding of. So our main character's name is Robert, and he is just a super average, normal guy from Montana. And one day he realizes that he can practice empirical philosophy. Specifically, he can fly. And like I said earlier, this is super rare for men to be able to do this. And so he goes to this university where it is only women there. He is the only man there that is practicing empirical philosophy. And he is suddenly very at odds with gender expectations. And I feel like it kind of flipped the script a little bit, because it usually is the woman in that position in a field full of men. I would say that would be the reality portion of it. And then over here in the fantasy portion of it, it's a man that's really in a woman's world. And I thought that was really interesting and honestly very well done in terms of writing. This also kind of takes place during a time when there is war going on and a lot of political unrest. And so a lot of the students at this college that Robert is attending are training to be helpful in the war, whether as a soldier or as a rescue corps. It doesn't really matter. That's kind of like where everybody is heading down the path regardless. So Robert really wants to learn and be able to participate in this elite rescue corps, where basically mostly women, but Robert as well, would fly into the war zone and get people out that are wounded and injured. So this book is historical fiction, but it's also fantasy. It's also kind of magical realism in a sense. And it's really a genre-bending masterpiece in my opinion. Characters are great, the story is great, the plot is awesome, and I just really enjoyed it. I think that this is definitely an escape from reality because of obviously the rich world building that is very unlike our current world. The flipped gender roles is super interesting, and again, not at all like our current reality. And the historical magic system, which is nothing that we would ever experience here. I really enjoyed this book, and I think that you would too, especially if you're looking for something a little bit different, a little bit magical, and an escape from reality. So pick up The Philosopher's Flight if that sounds like you. The next prompt I have is a book that you should read if you're currently in a reading slump. I have done whole videos on this prompt before, so there's a lot of books out there that I think are great for getting out of a reading slump. But again, I really challenged myself to pick books that I have either never talked about or talked about very little. This one, I don't think I've ever talked about it. Unfortunately, I have lost the dust cover to this one. And by lost, I mean, I definitely threw away when I was in my horrible stage of taking off all the dust covers because I thought that just the blank book looked better. It bothers me now, but there's nothing to be able to do about it. So I will also put the graphic up as I'm talking about it, but I would recommend Mirage by Samaya Dodd. So this book is a young adult fantasy book and follows our main character Amani when one day she is kidnapped from her very quiet, peaceful village and forced to serve as a body double for the cruel, horrific princess of this land that we're in. So Amani is literally forcibly taken from her home because she looks identical to the current princess, and the princess is one of an occupying regime. It's a very politically chaotic time in this fantasy world, and like I said, the princess of this occupying regime is really, really cruel, very, very evil. People hate her, and she's constantly under threat. And so Amani, they find, looks like an identical twin to this princess, and so they force her to be the body double, basically as like, if you get killed from these people that don't like you, it doesn't matter because you're not the real princess. And she has no choice in the matter, and she just has to go with it. So Amani is trapped in this role, trapped in this palace with people that she hates. She does not like the current leadership of this world. And then she gets kind of caught up in this rebellion, and she has to play basically a double agent because she has to be the body double for this princess, but also she really wants to fight against this power that is occupying the land. And it's all inspired by Moroccan culture, so the world building feels really, really rich and beautiful. It's young adult again, so it actually is very easy to read and fast paced, but I thought the prose of this was very beautiful. I will say that this book is the first in a series. I haven't read the following book because Tale as Old as Time, I read this before the second one came out, and then a year plus or so later, the next book came out and I had moved on emotionally and mentally. But even just talking about this book right now, I remember how much I really, really enjoyed it and totally binged it. This is an easy, fast-paced read. It has a ton of tension because the whole time you're just following Amani, so stressed out of your mind that they're gonna realize that she's kind of playing both sides here. It's in a really beautiful, vivid setting that you always want to go back to. It's very quickly paced, and all of those reasons combined is why I think that this would be a great book to pick up if you were really needing to get out of a reading slump. The next prompt I have on this list is a book to read when you're looking for something atmospheric. When I think of a book as being atmospheric, I really am talking about, unfortunately, the only word I can come up with right now is just the vibes. The entire vibe of the book. Does it feel cohesive? Does it feel immersive? Is it atmospheric in a way where you can really feel the world building and understand exactly what is going on? And just the entire feeling of the book is very rich, and it just kind of captures those super specific emotions from the reader. If you're looking for a book like that, then I would encourage you to pick up The Clockmaker's Daughter by Kate Morton. This book is really, really beautiful. It is haunting, honestly, is the best way that I can describe it, but not haunting in a way where I felt scared or disturbed or like spooky ghost fun time haunting. It's just that the writing is so beautiful and kind of tragic that you just feel a little bit haunted by it. Like it really sticks with you. I think that that is such an impressive thing if a book can do that to me. So this spans a lot of time. We're kind of jumping back and forth between present day and past tense. And in present day, we're following a modern archivist who suddenly uncovers some clues or some sketchy things that lead to an unsolved murder that happened over a century ago in this beautiful, grand country house. There's multiple narrators in this book, and I don't always love that, but I think it really, really works for this specific book because we are jumping past tense and present tense. There's a little bit of magic and fantasy thrown in here, but I definitely wouldn't consider this a fantasy book. I think I would consider it more to be a mystery. And even though we are following somebody who's trying to uncover these clues about a murder that happened, it doesn't feel like a classic whodunit mystery. It feels more like a literary fiction book or a historical fiction book that has mystery elements and that has magical elements in it, if that makes sense. It really does a good job of combining a lot of different types of writing, different genres into one beautiful book. And the whole story is all about unraveling this mystery of the murder. It's a very tangled, tragic tale of artistry, secrets, and even like grief and loss is dealt with a lot in this book. And I just thought the entire thing was really beautiful. And like I said, the vibes are there. It's super moody. It's very richly layered writing styles. And it all kind of comes together to create this timeless mystery story that really pulls you into the setting and the moodiness of it and the mystery of it. And you are just fully immersed in the atmosphere, which is kind of why I think it fits into this category. I know that calling a book atmospheric is a little bit of an ambiguous definition, but when you read it, you know what I'm talking about. Like, you get it once it's there. So if you're looking for something like that, I would definitely check out The Clockmaker's Daughter. Moving on. The next prompt I have classically is a book that makes you want to cry. I've said this before, I'll say it again. I cry in a lot of books. It does not take much to make me cry. So I had to pick a book that I haven't talked about in a while or at all. And I ended up going with Everyone Brave is Forgiven. This book didn't really make me sob or kind of like really, really lose it crying like something like My Friends or even maybe some of the Throne of Glass books recently I've been crying over. But it is a World War II book and it's beautifully written and it follows amazing characters. Those things alone, just a war book will always get me. It will always get me. And I think that that's true with a lot of people as well. So I feel pretty good about having this just be like a catch-all net of if you read this and have any emotion at all, you're probably going to tear up even a little bit. So like I said, this is set in World War II London and it follows our three main characters. Mary, who at one point was kind of this rich socialite but then turned into a school teacher. Tom, who is a pacifist but turned soldier just because of the nature of the times. And Alistair, who is a museum worker turned officer, again kind of just because of the times at that point. And their three lives are intertwined and forever changed by this war when it breaks out. And the reason that I think this book is actually so emotional is because the entire story is inspired by the letters that the author's grandparents wrote, which I think is why it feels really, really real. Because I do think that there are some World War II books where as much research as you can do, which is always really helpful, there's always something missing if you haven't lived through it or known somebody that has lived through it. And so the fact that the author was able to go through his grandparents' letters that they were actually writing during World War II and completely create this beautifully inspired story from them, it just brings a lot of real emotions through, which is why it's very easy to cry in this one. I think he does a great job of capturing the emotional complexities of war and love and loss and survival in this book. And it is a heartbreaking read. It is very, very real, very heartbreaking. The characters are so vividly written that you get really attached to them, and it's war. It's war. Sad things happen. You're gonna cry because you're sad, but in a good way, because it's a great book. So I would read Everyone Brave is Forgiven if you're in the mood to cry, which sounds weird, but we all know what I'm talking about. Sometimes you just need a good cry. But when you're not in the mood to cry, the next thing that you might look for is a book to read if you want to laugh out loud. And this is a new book that I recently read. I've never talked about it before, and it is Murder Takes a Vacation by Laura Lippman. I picked this up in Barnes & Noble because of the cover. It was very eye-catching. It looked very interesting. It was a short, quick read, which is kind of why I wanted to jump into it. This was such a fun read. I have never heard of Laura Lippman before this, but she's been writing for a really, really long time and has developed a lot of long-standing characters in these mystery series that she's written. This book in particular follows our main character, Mrs. Blossom, who is a 68-year-old widow that wins the lottery at the beginning of this story, and she books a 2-ish week European vacation for herself with the money that she has just recently won. So Mrs. Blossom, for a while, worked for a private investigator. She's technically retired now, but for a long time she worked for this private investigator kind of as a reconnaissance person, where she would just do recon or she would do surveillance for the private investigator who was working on these cases. The private investigator is just briefly in this book. She's not really in this book that much, but she actually has her own long book series that this author spent a lot of time writing and spent a lot of years with. And Mrs. Blossom is first introduced in that first book series. I've never read any of those books. This is the first book that I've read from this author. It's the first time that I've kind of heard anything about this book series. So technically this is kind of like a follow-up book slash series to what this author is known for writing. But I think if you haven't read any of the other books or even know anything about it, you don't feel the loss of that at all. Like, I was able to gather all that necessary information just from the context clues that the author gave us. And you can totally read this as just a standalone without having any prior knowledge. So Mrs. Blossom goes on this European vacation, and then somebody dies that she was connected to on the vacation. And then this super expensive, crazy statue is stolen, and she sort of just gets wrapped up in this plot of a lot of mystery and a lot of crime that she doesn't want to be involved in because, again, she is 68, she's retired, and she's just trying to enjoy a vacation for the first time in her life. She kind of can't help but get involved. It's written very lighthearted, and Mrs. Blossom is such a funny character, but she's not meaning to be funny, which is why it's funny, and she just kind of ends up in these super weird scenarios that I couldn't help but kind of giggle at a little bit. It definitely is not like full laugh out loud, belly laugh type of situation, but you're already in such a lighthearted spot reading this book that anytime something a little bit funny would happen, like my tonic level of reading is smiling at this point. So it was just easy to kind of giggle a little bit or laugh a little bit. It's a really colorful cast of characters. There's tons of hilarious mishaps that happen. It all is just like one big misunderstanding. And you just feel that energy of like, all Mrs. Blossom wants to do is relax. She just wants to relax, and yet she can't get away from murder at this point. It's really, really sweet. It's a good, tight plot line for a mystery. It feels very cozy, but there's definitely some exciting moments as well. And I think more of the reasons, like I said, of just the reason you would laugh out loud is just, it's very over the top. If you can go into this expecting something super campy, super over the top, and just let yourself enjoy it, it's easy to laugh and it's easy to enjoy. So I would highly recommend Murder Takes a Vacation if that's something you're looking for. All right, the next one that I have is a book to read if you enjoy a morally gray character. Morally gray characters have really gotten popular recently, and I think most of the time they're kind of described as one of the love interests in the book, where he's kind of the shadow daddy. He's bad, but he's good because he loves this woman in the book, and it's, you know, it's great. I love that too, but I think morally gray goes beyond those bounds of romantasy. I feel like that's usually where you find it. So I wanted to pick something that was a little bit more different for a morally gray character. So I want to recommend A Study in Charlotte by Brittany Cavallaro. This is part of a series, I will say. I think that there's 4 books in this series, and it's all kind of inspired by Sherlock Holmes. So our main character is Charlotte Holmes, who is the great-great-great-granddaughter, 3 greats, maybe 4 greats, one of the greats, granddaughter of Sherlock Holmes himself. And she goes to college and meets the great-great-great, add maybe 1 or 2 more greats, grandson of Watson, and his name is Jamie Watson. So we've got Charlotte Holmes and we've got Jamie Watson. And they kind of team up because of their heritage. They're both from very famous families, and they kind of team up, they become friends, and they start solving some mysteries. In this book in particular, they actually get framed for a murder that they didn't do. So in order to clear their name, they have to work together to solve the murder. Charlotte Holmes is the definition of a morally gray character, in my opinion. She is very unpredictable. She is very calculating. She is emotionally volatile. She makes very bad decisions, sometimes very bad decisions. She hurts the people around her many, many times across this series. You really, really dislike her a lot of the time, but also at the core of her, at the root of her, you know she's a good person, and so you want to like her, and you're still kind of drawn to that magnetism that she has, but she always disappoints you, if that makes sense. And Jamie, of course, is like the golden boy character in these books, which is kind of a similar relationship to Watson and Holmes in the original stories of Sherlock. So I think it kind of feels like that. It feels like you're reading Sherlock Holmes, but maybe a little bit of a twist for maybe a little bit of a younger audience. And I think it's a very unique way to retell those stories. So if you're looking for a morally gray character that is incredibly frustrating, really lets you down time and time again, and yet you can't help but root for them the entire time, I would check out A Study in Charlotte. Okay, the next prompt I have is a book to read if you want an epic plot twist. Now, I think that plot twists sometimes are not defined correctly, because I think they get confused for maybe a big reveal occasionally. Like, I've read mystery books or thriller books where there's just a lot of questions in the beginning of the book. And as you are reading the book, you go along and you're gathering these clues and you're coming to these conclusions. Then the reveal happens, and it's not really a twist. It's just like withholding information for shock value, which is great. I think a plot twist is when you are intentionally led to believe one thing, and then all of the sudden the plot twists and something else is actually entirely true. One of the prime examples for this in maybe like a modern book is The Silent Patient. And I've talked about this before as kind of being the standard for like a mystery thriller in my mind. This is what I'm always stacking things up to, because this book was crazy and it really captured my attention. And the plot twist is twisty. It's very, very twisty. And so I know that a lot of people would probably recommend this for a plot twist, but the reason that I want to bring it up in this video is kind of to cheat, to be honest, because at the end of this book, Alex Michaelides does something so nice for the reader. And he actually puts together a list of the 5 best plot twists in fiction of all time. And he says you should read 5 Little Pigs by Agatha Christie. Agatha Christie is totally known for her plot twists. The Portrait of a Lady by Henry James. The Good Soldier by Ford Madox Ford. Gone Girl by Gillian Flynn. And Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier. I have not read any of those books, but The Silent Patient I think is one of the best plot twists ever. So if the author is recommending me 5 amazing best plot twists, I have to believe that they're pretty good. If you haven't read The Silent Patient, read that for a plot twist, or take Alex Michaelides' advice and read one of the 5 books listed. The next prompt I have is completely different from a book with a plot twist, and that is a book to read if you want some cozy vibes. I'm a big cozy reader as well. I love a book that is slow paced, that is easy to read, that is gentle reading as a way to maybe describe it. And I think one of those books would be the Gernzi Literary and Potato Peel Pie Society. I've talked about this a few times, but again, not a ton. This book is written all in letters. We have our main characters and they are writing letters back and forth to each other, and that is how the book is written. And that's the first time that I've ever read a book that is using this writing mechanism, and I loved it. I loved the way that the prose are all laid out in this book. So it's told through a series of letters. This takes place directly post World War II, and it follows our main character, Juliet Ashton, who is a writer from London who begins a correspondence with a bunch of people that live on the island of Gernzi. And through these letters and correspondence, she learns about this really funny, quirky book club that was formed during the German occupation. And the book club is the Gernzi Literary and Potato Peel Pie Society. This book is full of immense warmth and a little bit of humor. There's a really charming love story. I think it's quiet, it's slow, it's simple, it's gentle, and it is very, very cozy. It kind of gives that World War II atmosphere and that love story atmosphere without really pulling on, not in a bad way, but like the deep, deep, deep emotions that, like Everyone Brave is Forgiven, just make you want to cry the whole time. This just kind of feels lighthearted, yes, while still covering some really difficult and deep topics. It just feels warm, and I really, really enjoyed this, and I think that this would be a great read if you're looking for something cozy. But if you're not looking for something cozy, you may be looking for a book to read that is super fast-paced and bingeable. Now, I have also done a whole video on bingeable books, so it was tough to try to find something that I hadn't already talked about before, but I am going to go with Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zevin. I definitely haven't talked about this book in a while, so I wanted to bring it back and just kind of bring it up to some people's attentions. I feel like this is a book that everybody has heard about, and there's a whole population that have read it and have their opinions on it, whether they loved it or disliked it, doesn't matter. But then there's a whole group of people over here that have heard about it, seen everybody talking about it, and it's kind of like in the back of their mind of, I want to read that someday, but then they still have never picked it up. This is your sign to finally pick this book up. So this follows a couple different characters, but really focuses on our main 2 characters, Sam and Sadie. So they are friends and creative partners who come together in the 90s to create this video game that goes absolutely insane. It shoots them to the top of the industry. They suddenly get all of this money and investors and interest in future games, and they kind of start a company to develop more games. I really enjoyed everything that went into the video game making side of things, especially because this book also spans decades. We start in the 90s and we go for the next 30 or so years. And so seeing how the video game industry changes from when they started and they're just 2 college students that are coding and building this thing in their dorm rooms, all the way to they have an entire company in Silicon Valley that is trying to pump out these different types of games. That was really interesting just because I'm also interested in the topic. I really enjoy playing video games. It's something that my husband and I do together, and that's really fun. I kind of had a pre-investment in that aspect of it, but even if you don't care about video games at all, I think that there's so much in this book for you to enjoy, particularly the relationships between all of the characters and the bonds that they form over these years. It's passionate, it's complicated, it is ever evolving throughout this book. It focuses on themes of creativity, betrayal, grief, and evolving as a person over 30, 40 years of your life, and how you naturally will change and your relationships will change. I think that this is a very bingeable book and a fast-paced book because the chapters are actually really short. Never underestimate a short chapter in getting you to the finish line of a longer book. It really, really helps just mentally. So there's short chapters, but also the pacing of this is super electric and intense, where it just feels like you're on the edge of your seat the whole time. These characters are constantly developing and evolving in their emotional arcs, and I just don't think that you would be able to put it down. So that's why I think it fits really well in this kind of fast-paced bingeable category, and you should definitely pick up Tomorrow, Tomorrow, Tomorrow if you're looking for something like that. Next, I have a book to read if you're feeling nostalgic. Obviously, everybody's nostalgia or their childhood memories is going to be different, so it's hard for me to tell you what to read if you're feeling nostalgic, but I will tell you what I would read if I was feeling nostalgic, and that is The Last Unicorn by Peter S. Beagle. This is kind of heralded as one of the first sort of modern-ish fantasy standalone books. I think this was written in the late 60s or early 70s, and it follows a unicorn as the main character who learns that she may be the last of her kind. So she decides to set off on a quest to potentially find other unicorns and really confirm if she is the last of her kind. And she's accompanied by a couple different characters, like a failed magician and a very no-nonsense girl that kind of tags along. I think it's a very poetic book. It's a very philosophical book. It really deals with identity and where we find our purpose in life. It speaks a lot to the beauty of innocence as well. And there is a lot of really deep themes in this, but it's all kind of packaged up in this sweet, cute little fantasy book that feels really whimsical and fun at the same time. And I really, really think that he treaded that line super carefully of not going too deep where all of these themes that we're dealing with and talking about are going over people's heads, because this really is kind of geared towards a younger audience, but also not sacrificing the depth of emotion that these characters are dealing with just for goofy, fun, whimsical time. I really, really enjoy this book. I think it reads kind of like a bedtime story, but with a lot of depth and heart in it. And it just kind of makes you ache for that magic of childhood. And so I think that that is why it's a really nostalgic read, definitely for me, but also just the way that it's written. I think anybody would kind of feel a little nostalgic about. So definitely give this a try. All right, we're nearing the end. I have 3 more books to talk about. The first one is a book to read if you're looking for something that is really beautifully written. Now, I have never talked about this book on this channel before, and that is The Starless Sea by Erin Morgenstern. Now, Erin Morgenstern has written one of my favorite books of all time, which is The Night Circus. I love The Night Circus. The Starless Sea, I didn't love that much. I enjoyed it for sure, but I think I was going into it comparing it to The Night Circus and hoping that I would find another book like The Night Circus, and it didn't really meet my expectations. I didn't love the characters as much. I didn't love the story as much. I still liked it. Let me be clear about that. It's a good book. It just is not as good as The Night Circus in my opinion. However, Erin Morgenstern is such a beautiful writer. It shows very, very clearly in The Night Circus, but I actually think that her prose are even stronger in The Starless Sea. So this follows our main character, Zachary, when he discovers a book that contains a story from his own childhood. And that kind of sets him off on a journey, a quest, leading him to this beautiful, fantastical, magical world that is hidden and sprawling with tons of libraries. I love a book about a book. I love a book about libraries, and that's definitely this. There's secret societies within this world. There's timeless love stories. It's a puzzle box of narratives nested within other narratives, if that makes sense. And it's really cool. Although I don't like this as much as The Night Circus, I think that this book is a little bit more impressive to me. It's a lot more complicated and complex, but it is so well done. The prose in this are very lush and lyrical. Every single chapter feels like Erin Morgenstern just writing a love letter to stories and novels and books. And especially if you are a reader yourself and you really enjoy reading lots of different types of books, I think you can kind of identify with the writing in this, because it is just about stories and how much they affect us and change us. And it's just written really, really well. And so I would highly recommend you pick this up. Even though it's not my favorite book, I didn't necessarily love the story, I can appreciate it for what it is and what it accomplished and how impressive it is, honestly. So I would still give The Starless Sea a try. The next prompt I have is a book to read if you are in the mood for a slow burn romance. I think slow burn romances are amazing. We all love a slow burn, but a lot of times they are nested in a longer series when you can really feel a slow burn where 2 characters are introduced in the first book and it's clear that there's some romantic tension and you really want them to be together, but they don't get together until like the 3rd book. And then they break up in the 4th book and then they get back together in the 5th book, or whatever that looks like. A slow burn romance, I think, is always associated maybe with a series, and it's harder to find a slow burn in a single standalone book. But I do think a really good example of this is The Ministry of Time by Kayleen Bradley. This is a book that really defines slow burn romance to me. You meet your 2 main characters, the love interest, right in the beginning of the book, and the rest of the book is just building tension on top of each other. It's stolen glances. It's their hands brushing against each other. It's little acts of service that they do without saying actually what they're feeling. And the whole time as a reader, you're just like, oh my gosh, you love each other, please get together. And it is just a carrot that is dangling right in front of you for the entirety of the book. And then it feels so satisfying when certain things happen in the book and so heartbreaking when other things happen in the book. I'm trying not to give a ton away, but it just is the slowest burn. In my opinion. So this kind of takes place in the near-ish future Britain when time travelers are extracted from the past and brought into the present tense and helped along in their life to see if they can live in modern day time. So our two main characters, one of them is considered like a bridge, somebody that helps a person that is extracted from the past. And then of course you have your time traveler coming from the past that is learning how to live in modern day time. And so they're forced to live in the same house and they have to figure out what life looks like because of that. Another bonus point for this one, yes, it's a slow burn romance, but also it's kind of a forbidden romance. We've got our bridge and we've got our expat, and they're not supposed to be together. They're not supposed to start a romantic relationship because it is an experiment that's happening. It's a government-run scientific experiment if they can bring people from the past to live in modern day Britain, futuristic kind of modern day Britain, and a romance would certainly mess up the results of that. So you got slow burn, but you also kind of got forbidden a little bit in there, which makes the tension even stronger in my opinion. The emotional tension just builds so strongly, so richly, and you really savor every second of the growing intimacy between these two characters. I think it is very much a slow burn romance. I love it. This is a 5-star read for me. I know that there are some mixed opinions about this book. I personally really enjoyed it, and I think if you are looking for an exciting romance, but there's also a lot of other stuff going on. I don't think that this is just a primary romance book. There's a lot of political interest. There's a lot of action that kind of happens near the end. There's kind of something in here for everyone. So if you've been debating about picking this one up for a while, I think you should definitely give it a shot. The Ministry of Time. It's a great one. And the last prompt I'm going to talk about is what to read if you are looking for your next 5-star book. Again, I have talked about this one before, but not a lot. So I'm going to recommend Beartown by Fredrik Backman. Fredrik Backman is just really hitting for me recently. His last 2 books have been easy 5 stars for me. And the first book that I read of him was like a 4.5. So it really got close to that line. We all kind of know the synopsis of this one. It takes place in a small hockey-obsessed town when one day a tragic, violent act is committed that really throws absolute chaos into the town and the people that live there and the families that are there. Everything is just flipped on its head. And because it is such a small town, it's really divided as well. We've got the people over here that are on one side of the conflict and the people over here that are on another side of the conflict. And it really dives into the true cost of loyalty and friendship and betrayal and justice, honestly. It's a really devastating read. It's very morally layered because even though a lot of these characters in this book do bad things, I think Fredrik Backman writes it in a way where he really describes everybody as just being purely human, and humans are broken and humans make mistakes. And so you kind of have compassion for everybody, even the ones that are doing the wrong things. And that's a very interesting place to be put in as a reader, especially somebody like me that loves a good true good versus true evil book. It's kind of why I always gravitate towards fantasy, because I just love that ever-present war of good versus evil. But then you give me a book like Beartown where nobody really is true evil and nobody really is true good because we just keep making mistakes because it's hard to be a human sometimes. It's a very complex thing to read and kind of figure out where you stand with everybody as a reader. And I think that that is really impressive and a really difficult thing to do as an author. This is a heartbreaking book and it will make you feel really deeply. And I think because you can get to that depth of emotion, that's a 5-star read to me. There is something for everyone in this book, and I would highly recommend that it go near the top of your TBR list if you have not read it yet. So there you have it. That is 13 books to read for whatever mood you're in. We covered a wide range of topics here, so I'm really hoping that if you are feeling any of these prompts, there's something for you here in this list. Let me know if you've read any of these books already, if you have thoughts and opinions on these books or other books that fit these prompts as well. Let's help each other out in the comments finding our next 5-star reads. As always, thank you so much for joining and watching and hanging out with me on this little corner of the internet. I really appreciate it. We'll see you next time.